two young girls, the confident sister Barnes and the timid sister Paxton, are Mormon missionaries. Their duty is to convert people to their faith and attract new followers. Paxton complains that she hasn't managed to convert anyone, while Barnes has already brought in 8 or 9 new believers. The girls tried to strike up conversations with passers-by, but they were ignored. When they encountered a group of schoolgirls, the girls asked to take a picture together. Paxton kindly agreed, but one of the girls pulled down Paxton's skirt and joked about their magic underwear. This greatly upset Paxton. She says people find them strange and mentions that their religion is mocked in an episode of South Park. Barnes replies that few people seriously think about it and encourages Paxton, telling her she's awesome. They arrive at the home of a reclusive Englishman, Mr. Reed, a man interested in their faith. Paxton is very nervous, as she is eager to convert Mr. Reed to Mormonism. A heavy rain began to fall. Reed opened the door, Barnes handed him a brochure, and Paxton began to talk about Mormonism. Reed invited the girls into the house. Barnes asked if he had a wife or another woman living with him, as they couldn't enter otherwise. Paxton explained it was a precautionary measure. Reed said his wife was home and baking a pie. Hearing this, the girls agreed to enter the house. Reed asked if the metal in the ceilings and walls bothered them. The girls replied that it didn't. Reed offered to take their coats and then left the room to check on the snacks. The girls began to look around the house. Barnes noticed a butterfly. Reed returned with drinks and said he couldn't get his wife to come out, but the pie would be ready soon. Paxton asked if Reed was ready to hear about their religion, but he asked for a little more time and inquired where they were from. Paxton said she was from Ogden, Utah, one of 8 daughters. She also mentioned that Barnes was from Salt Lake City, but Barnes clarified that she was actually from Philadelphia. Paxton shared that she grew up in the church, while Barnes's mother came from a different faith. After her father's death, they attended various churches until they found the one that became their true home. Reed showed himself to be well-versed in religion and produced a Book of Mormon. Paxton was thrilled with how much he had read and remarked that he studied more than they did, suggesting they take him as an example. Barnes remarked that the pie smelled amazing, and Reed invited them to guess what kind of pie his wife was baking. Paxton, after sniffing the air, guessed it was blueberry pie. Then Reed asked what Barnes's father had died of. She replied, but Reed, mishearing it as blueberry disease, was momentarily confused. Barnes corrected him, explaining it was Lou Gehrig's disease. Reed asked if her father had sent any signs from the afterlife, to which Barnes replied no. Reed then noticed a scar on her arm. Paxton said she wished she could become a butterfly after death. She would flutter near those she cared about, landing on their fingers so they would know it was her. Suddenly, the lights in the house went out, and Reed decided to ask the girls a provocative question. He asked what they thought about polygamy. Paxton replied that it wasn't for her. Barnes explained that polygamy was necessary for Mormonism at the time to increase the number of followers. It also helped expand the community. She adds that the practice was abolished not because of a scandal, it ended because it was no longer needed. Reed countered that in his opinion, Joseph Smith only legalized polygamy to sleep with many women. He said the practice had nothing to do with a spiritual mission. Reed added, if divine revelations are transmitted through a person and a person can be sinful or corrupt, how can one find the truth? Reed revealed that he had studied many religions and felt overwhelmed by them, like fast food. In the end, unfortunately, he found the one. Barnes asked Reed to call his wife, and he stepped away to do so. Barnes noticed a candle on the table, and upon turning it, realized the smell they had perceived was not from a pie. Reed returned and said his wife was ready to receive them, then asked them to follow him. Barnes deceived Reed, saying she was getting a call and promised they would be right there. The girls headed for the door, but remembered their bicycle keys were in their coats. They decided to leave without the bicycles, but couldn't open the door. Barnes suggested trying to escape through a window, but the windows were too narrow to climb through. There was no cell service, and Paxton couldn't make a call. Suddenly, the lights went out again, and the girls decided to find Reed. They wanted to get their coats and leave the house. Opening a door and entering a room, Barnes told Reed that Sister Hall had called. She had urgently asked them to return to the church. Reed expressed disappointment upon hearing this. As they put on their coats, Barnes discovered the bicycle key was in Paxton's coat. They asked Reed to help open the door, but he said it was impossible. The lock mechanisms were on a timer, and he had forgotten to remove a pin when they arrived. Reed added that if they wanted to leave, they would have to use the back door. Barnes insisted he open the front door so they could leave peacefully. Reed firmly stated the door wouldn't open until morning. He told them they shouldn't have lied about the call from the church. He reminded the girls that there was metal in the walls. Cell service didn't work there, so they couldn't have gotten a signal. Paxton asked Reed to go get his wife so she could greet them and see them out. Reed hinted that he didn't have a wife. The girls agreed to leave through the back door and headed towards it. Barnes opened the door and looked inside. The girls then realized it led to a basement and didn't seem to go outside. Meanwhile, Elder Kennedy noticed the girls were missing. Reed took out a Monopoly box and began to explain explain its history. He said the game was a copy, and the original version was created by a feminist, Elizabeth Maggie. She died without receiving recognition for her influence on American culture. Charles Darrow, a heater salesman, got rich by claiming the game was his own invention. Reed used the Monopoly game example to explain to the girls that all modern religions are copies of previous ones. Then Reed showed them two doors, offering the girls a choice between belief and disbelief. He called their book a farce and threw it to the floor. When Barnes picked it up, she noticed a letter opener. Paxton suggested going through the door of disbelief, but Barnes, affirming her faith in God, chose the opposite. Barnes began to argue with Reed, pointing out his inaccuracy regarding the idea that all religions are copies of previous ones. Barnes asked Paxton if she still believed in God. Paxton replied affirmatively, and Barnes suggested she go through the door of faith. They began to descend, and Reed locked the door behind them. Continuing their descent into the basement, they entered another area. They started looking for an exit and noticed a window with bars on it. Barnes tried to reach the window, but she couldn't. Suddenly they heard a noise, and Barnes handed Paxton a paper knife. She warned her that if a threat arose, she should stab him in the neck. Barnes came up with a code word for Paxton: magic underwear. A door opened and a woman emerged with a pie in her hand. She placed it on a table and struck a strange pose. Paxton thought it was Reed's wife but received no answer. Suddenly they heard music, and Barnes headed upstairs trying to open the door. She noticed a box of matches and tried to reach it, but the music stopped abruptly and she went back down. In the basement there was a pipe through which they could hear Reed. He began to explain everything to them. Reed informed them they were near God's prophetess. He said the girls were needed as witnesses to confirm that the miracle was real. Reed revealed he had added aconite and belladonna to the pie. He explained that after the prophetess ate the pie, she would die but then be resurrected. After eating the pie, the prophetess died. Reed asked the girls to check the prophetess's pulse and breathing to ensure she was dead. The girls confirmed it. Reed insisted she would soon be resurrected. Suddenly the doorbell rang and Reed went to see who it was. The girls wanted to scream as soon as the front door opened, but Reed had anticipated this. He had locked the door to avoid attracting attention. Reed hid all the evidence and opened the door, setting the lock on a timer. Elder Kennedy asked him if the girls had come to see him. Reed lies, saying he hasn't seen the girls and they didn't come to him. The man believes Reed and leaves. At that moment, the girls are trying to reach a matchbox. Reed returned to the room and the girls almost got caught, but the doorbell saved the girls and they managed to get the matches. Elder Kennedy returned because he forgot to hand over the brochure. Paxton noticed the prophetess moved, but Barnes assured her it was just her imagination. They tried to light the matches to start a fire, hoping the smoke from a pipe would attract attention and they would be found. Reed looked out the window to make sure Elder Kennedy had left. The prophetess began to speak, and the girls were terrified. She described a near-death experience, concluding, "It's not real." At that moment, Reed entered and took the prophetess away. Reed asked what they had seen, and Paxton explained what the prophetess had told them. Reed told them he would show them God if they were willing to die, but promised they would be resurrected. Barnes began to argue with Reed, telling him it wasn't a miracle. At age 4, she had experienced clinical death after visiting a Taco Bell where E. coli was found in the food. She had to undergo kidney surgery, and during that time, she saw the same visions as the prophetess. This happens because the brain is deprived of oxygen, which causes visions. Barnes uttered the code word magic underwear, and Paxton pulled out the paper knife. At that moment, Reed slit Barnes's throat. He cut her arm and pulled out an implant, assuring Paxton that Barnes was a program and not real. Reed explained the concept of the butterfly dream to Paxton. He concluded that we live in such an advanced simulation that we cannot distinguish real life from an artificial dream. He assured Paxton that in her case she would be able to resurrect, unlike Barnes. Paxton said she didn't believe Reed's theory and knew it was just a contraceptive implant. Paxton suggested that when the elder came, someone had swapped the body through a secret door and taken her place. The prophetess had read a script prepared by Reed, except for her last words, "It's not real." Paxton believed she was trying to say that the miracle Reed spoke of was a lie. She was sure that everything happening was just an illusion created by his manipulations and prepared scenarios. Reed told her that if that were the case, there must be another entrance to the basement. Moving a table, Paxton found a secret door. She went down to find the answer. She saw the prophetess's body. Walking across the room, she saw a door locked with their bicycle lock. She took the key and opened the door. Entering the room, she she saw cages with people locked inside. Reed asked, "What is true religion?" Paxton replied that Reed was trying to convince her it was just about control. Reed assured the girl that she had been controlled her whole life. She was told whom to worship and even what underwear to wear. He uttered the code word magic underwear and Paxton stabbed him in the throat with the paper knife, then ran upstairs. She burst into an office and locked the door. Opening another door, she realized it also led to the basement. Reed suddenly appeared behind and stabbed her. Reed asks to pray for them. She tells him about the Great Prayer Experiment where people were divided into two groups. One group was prayed for and the other wasn't. The result was the same for both, prayed no difference. Paxton adds that even if it changes nothing, praying for someone is beautiful. It's good to think about others, even those like Reed. Paxton begins to pray. Reed crawled towards her intending to kill her, but suddenly Barnes regained consciousness and delivered the final blow to Reed, killing him before dying herself. Using the model house Reed had made, Paxton found the exit and got outside. A butterfly landed on her hand and then flew away.